You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, joined by Macon Gillespie of the Grove Report. And he has been clicking during this transfer portal season. And John, it looks like Ole Miss is going to come out of this unscathed, or at least relatively unscathed.
Yeah, I mean, I think in today's lexicon, so to speak, you never really come out of it fully unscathed. I mean, 100%. But as far as, hey, the world isn't ending is what you kind of aim for. Keep some of these really big key pieces that you have. I think Ole Miss has accomplished that. It's again, not only has Lane Kiffin shown the ability to get guys out of the portal, but retaining them has been really big. And I mean, that's to me just as big, because if you land them and they leave, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, this whole spring practice has been about Lane Kiffin, a kinder, gentler spring, no contact, the spring game thing that they did. All of that was to make this spring portal not tick anybody off and have players get into the portal. They didn't talk about depth charts. They didn't talk about all of that stuff. Everything was designed to survive these 2 weeks, and it looks like it was mission accomplished.
Yeah, and I think if you give this staff any reason to not discuss depth charts, I think they will take it. I don't think they like depth charts. In fact, I know they don't like depth charts. But it turned out really well, so far at least. And now as things wind down, I mean, it looks like it did pay off. The whole lighter spring strategy, not giving away too much even to your own players.
Yeah, and now it's going to transition, and people's not going to realize this. Like today, the transfer portal window closed, and the school has 48 hours to get the people that have already applied in, but nobody after this can go into the transfer portal until after football season, which means Lane Kiffin can kind of become Nick Saban now. I was talking to my boss, Zach Blackerby, and everything is like, hey, Lane's done all of this kinder, gentler stuff and all of this, but now that players are kind of locked in, you're going to see him transition to kind of the hardcore Nick Saban program running thing. I think it could be interesting, but I think we're going to see a different, again, Lane Kiffin moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty safe assumption. I think on one hand, I think it's pretty clear that Lane really likes this roster. Obviously, again, he'll say all the stuff about it, and it's true that having a really good roster is different than having a really good team. Okay, I mean we've seen that before, but he really likes this roster as far as its makeup of talent is concerned. Two, I don't think he's shied away from that, but I do think he will be continuing to be careful which I mean it's because it's who he is, not giving into rat poisoning himself a little bit. I think he can tread that line of saying, hey, I really like this roster. I think they can do really good things, but also not making them think that, hey, okay, we're now the big dog on the street when the season is still left to be played. I think that is a difficult line to tread, but I think it's one that he will tread.
I think a couple of days ago, I described it as this. Ole Miss football right now is the 6 that landed a 10. And they're so worried that 10 is going to trade up and do whatever they have to do. They're going to make them happy. They're going to play the ball, play the game that they feel like they need to play so they can retain that 10. That is the way that Ole Miss and Ole Miss fans are looking at the roster. I think, though, there's a danger for Ole Miss for going overboard in that insecurity of the talent and everything's going on. I do think that there is a chance that Lane might be going a little bit too far that direction, and basically the no contact in the spring, everybody's going to talk about that. I think the first game that Ole Miss comes out and it doesn't tackle well, I think we're going to look back at spring and have a little bit of a reason. I think this could be a double-edged type sword for Lane.
Yeah, and I think inevitably, people, self included, the media, so to speak, will go back and point at that. Yeah, in quotes, will go back and point at that, as a reason that, okay, maybe Ole Miss didn't tackle well against whoever. Whether that's fair or not, I mean, we don't necessarily know, but I mean, it does make sense. Uh, but I mean, if you're looking at it from a purely roster retention standpoint, it did work, or it seems to have worked. Um, but again, I've been on the page before that I do think sometimes the cards are played a little too close to the vest. I think we've seen that with quarterback competitions, definitely over the last couple of years. Um, I've always been on team name your quarterback if you know who it is. And I mean, obviously that's past now, but still, that's just kind of an example that sometimes the cards can be played a little too close to the vest, and it winds up hurting you more in the long run.
Yeah, I think it would be absolutely hilarious on May 2nd if a depth chart got released.
Oh gosh, yeah, and I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but it would be pretty funny.
But I
Yeah,
mean, there's nowhere they could go. I mean, the whole
yeah,
reason for the depth chart thing was to not tick people off and get them in the portal. They can't go until after the season, and that would it would be funny. But now, like I was saying, since the portal has come to an end, Ole Miss can start to fill roles, and everybody's been talking about, hey, Ole Miss is being slow right now. They've only signed the running back for New Mexico and the running back, Henry Parrish Jr. for Miami, and that was because there was nobody in the running back room to scare off. You could bring those people in and do that, and nobody was going to get upset about it. When you look at the other positions, you couldn't do that. Whether or not Tyler Barron is an option, you still don't necessarily want to bring him in on the off chance that it ticks off Princely and Princely
mm,
gets into the portal, or ticks off Walter Nolan and he gets into the portal. Now on May 2nd, whatever, or May 3rd, you can have visits coming in for linebackers, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, defensive backs, positions that might have been difficult to deal with before because of the threat of the transfer portal. Now it just is about competition. And Lane Kiffin can perform, like I said, like Nick Saban, and be very cutthroat in competition in Ole Miss football.
yeah, and I think he's shown a willingness to do that. Willingness is not really the right word. I think he's shown a borderline eagerness to do that, maybe.
Competition
Run
is
his program.
the number one tenet of Ole Miss football because it comes from the Pete Carroll stuff. I know
Right.
this because I was on Ed Orgeron's staff. I saw the top 3 list, the core values, and competition was number one. So Lane Kiffin is from that same tree. So I imagine that competition is a major part of his DNA.
Well, and I mean, just again going back to the quarterback scenario. I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but you bring in last year just as an example for competition purposes, the Spencer Sanders and the Walker Howard, bringing them into the quarterback room. That kind of illustrates how importantly he sees competition, because otherwise, why would you bring those guys in?
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and I think he's shown his very strong willingness to mirror the way he runs his program after a Pete Carroll, after a Nick Saban, because they taught him so much, and he hasn't shied away from that. He thinks that the way they ran things was the way to do it. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, that's a really good thing that your coach wants to run your program that way, because I mean, obviously, it's been successful everywhere it's been. So.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. And when we come back, we're going to go over John's top 5 SEC coaches as a part of our top 5s this week. But first, guys, I need you all to listen up to this huge announcement. I've been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eyes on the score, putting my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I'm finally on top. That's right. Obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You've probably heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on the classic Monopoly, and you can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the freaking moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on your iconic properties, just like Monopoly. And you can take care of your friends by going after their monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmark. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a monopoly tycoon and who is a wannabe. So get yourself on the charts, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices for the Gametime app actually go down the closer they get to first pick and pitch. And with killer last minute deals, all in prices and views from your seats, their lowest price guarantee, Gametime makes the guesswork, takes it out of buying MLB tickets. So talk about Tampa Bay. You know, you go to a game at Tropicana Field. You end up wanting to see the Tigers play the Tampa Bay Rays, but you don't know how to do it. Well, one thing that they have, which one of my favorite features, is the view from the seats, because I wanted to see a sweet left-handed swing. Colt Keith, Riley Green, those guys that play for the Detroit Tigers, I wanted to see that. And I was able to look it up, get the view to home plate on the Gametime app, and get tickets that fit that seat at a price I could handle. You know, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, John. We are going to move into top 5 territory now, and we're going to start with number 5 for the top 5 coaches currently in the Southeastern Conference. Number 5 and why?
Okay. On the spot a little bit, I think my 4 and 5 are a little, you can kind of change them back and forth. I think Josh Heupel. I think he's my number 5. I really like the offense. I like what he's been able to accomplish at Tennessee. It just kind of the vibes there are better than they were, obviously, when I was in college. So that's really a program that has turned around a lot. I like the work that he's been able to do in Knoxville. I think I have him at number 5.
Okay, number 4.
And this is why I say they're interchangeable. Brian Kelly at number 4. I think he's a really good coach. I really do. I mean, he's got a great track record. I think, though, with a Heisman winner at quarterback last year, you should have finished better than you did. That's why I kind of have him at number 4. Again, the track record's there. He's been successful since he got to Baton Rouge, but I need to see that next step before I bump him up a little bit.
Okay, number 3.
Lane. I have Lane at number 3. I think what he's been able to do in the transfer portal is incredible. And the turnaround that has happened over the 4 to 5 years that he's been in Oxford is miraculous, pretty much. I mean, if you had said to either one of us, I think in 2019, that this Ole Miss team would be in 2 Access Bowls, win the Peach Bowl, be knocking on the door of the college football playoff, I would have called you crazy. And I assume you probably would have too, but I have Lane at number 3. I think just what he's done where he is should not be understated.
Okay, number 2.
Sarkisian. I only have him at 2 because he made the college football playoff. I also really like the machine he's kind of building there in Austin. I think he's got a lot of great resources. I think he's a really good coach. His personal story is really cool. He doesn't shy away from that either. And again, another Saban disciple that doesn't hurt anything. I have him at number 2.
All right. That means that likely Kalen DeBoer did not make your top 5. So I'm going to say that number 1 is probably the free space. Am I correct?
You are correct. I have Kirby Smart 1. And I can go into it. Well, I think we all know kind of why Kirby is number one, but I would have DeBoer sixth. And I may eat those words eventually. Okay, he may have a great season at Alabama. He's obviously a really good coach. To me, I need to see him prove it in the SEC before I'm sold in. I just think, obviously what he did at Washington was amazing, and he's won everywhere he's been, but coming into the SEC is going to be a different animal. And taking the reins from Nick Saban is going to be a different animal. Expectations are different in Tuscaloosa. He's going to have to battle with that. This is a big year for him. Obviously, it's his first year there, but proving that he belongs in the SEC to me is why I have him at 6.
All right. So would I assume that probably your opinion of the top of the SEC this year would probably be Georgia and Texas?
Yes. Yeah, I would say probably so. And I think Ole Miss is a close third.
Okay.
Looking at it on paper. Yeah.
If Lane Kiffin makes it into let's say Ole Miss hosts a playoff game. Okay.
Mhm.
They host a playoff game. Lane Kiffin getting the top 2?
Yes. I think
Jackson Dart, the greatest of all time at Ole Miss.
Yes. I hesitated longer on that than I needed to. Yes. I think that will be a multi-layered conversation if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, in the current era of college football, I think it's more difficult now than it was when, say, Archie and Eli played, which that's a big gap in itself too.
Please don't put Eli in that conversation. That hurts me, man.
I'm just saying, he at the time.
Eli's like 5 years younger than me.
Well, okay. That's yeah. But yeah, I do think he will have earned that title probably as the greatest of all time at Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. But yeah, that'll be when everybody gets my opinions, it's going to be Thursday night. We're going to debut our top 5s. This week it'll be top 5 SEC coaches. I'm getting all my guests to tell me their top 5. And we're just going to have a little bit of fun because it's the off season and nobody wants to talk about baseball right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. John, thank you so much. Tell everybody what you got going on at the Grove Report this week.
Well, it's going to be we're kind of shifting into off-season mode a little bit. Obviously, baseball is still going on; that will still be a thing. But really, I mean, the bulk of what we're kind of doing is more off-season football type stuff. I mean, we're kind of shifting into talking season a little bit, as I like to call it. So there'll be a lot of football content between now and August 31st. That's going to kind of be our MO.
Yeah, and honestly, people will enjoy that because my stuff is football every day, regardless of the season. So yeah, that's what it. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, John. I'll talk to you next week, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Stephen.